Let me get the recording going. And close the darn thing. Yeah. Okay, so back at the back in the Sirrus application, I'm going to come back over here and hit the menu bar in the top left corner. The second thing I'll teach you beyond the settings is at the grower level, which shows you your AgX account that you're signed into here. Okay, I'm going to hit this edit button here in the top right of that view, and that shows me all the other growers, farms, and fields that I have in that AgX account that are still in the cloud, but they're not on my local mobile device. So the point I'm making here is you may have 250,000 acres and 10 years of data on your home computer, on your PC running Summit, but you don't have to have all of that layers and all of those years and all those growers down on your Sirrus, and you don't want those. People always want to know how many acres can you reasonably manage. And if you've got 2 to 3 years of data of 30 to 40,000 acres, you typically can manage that quite well on the technology today. But do not download 10 years of data across 50,000 acres and expect our system to run very fast. So you can subset out what growers, farms, and fields that you want. One of the new items in 4.8 is I can open up a grower now. So if I go down here to all my growers, and let's say I take Campbell, and if I open up Mr. Campbell, I can select him and then hit done up there on the top, or sorry, I can come up here and hit this download farms and fields rather than the entire grower. So if I turn that on, I can now go to Campbell, and that's going to look at the hierarchy of Campbell, and it says here's all the growers, farms, and fields that you have on your system. Bill, select the ones that you want, and you can sub-select only the fields that you're interested in to download rather than all 100 fields if you had 100 fields underneath that particular grower. So you now in 4.8 can download subsets of your growers, farms, and fields onto your Sirrus. You don't have to have the entire grower anymore as of 4.8. So if I hit done to that, you'll notice Campbell is downloading now. It's downloading because it's spinning, and I can't do any. Well, it already caught up. But even if it wasn't caught up yet, I can still go work with everything else. So the two things that, just to reiterate real quickly, is set in the general settings your seasons, and then the layers of data that you want, and then in the settings here for the growers, set up what growers, farms, and fields that you need in order to go out and do your crop scouting for the next several days, several weeks, several months. Okay? Once that's complete, then you can come up here and start doing the actual scouting thereof. So I'm going to click on Bob Anderson. It shows me, in this case, my 2 farms. I'm going to go into the Anderson family farm, and I'm going to click on the 01 field. So I'm going to go down to the field view, and I'm going to mock this up, of course, because I'm in an office, so I'm not in that field. This is actually up in Missouri, where this field is located. But I'm at the field level, and I'm going to step into the field. Just again, I'm mocking this up, and I'm going to come down here on the bottom center of the page and hit this Add button. When this pops up, this is another feature that's new in 4.8. It used to be those different window panes. Now we put it in a little more organizational fashion. So here's all the layers of data, and you can also, that you can collect. You can hit the up and down arrows up here, which means that you can come in there and push these up. So if scouting is something that you want at the top, and if it was not at the top, you could sit there and take that, and those 3 parallel bars over on the right, you can move those layers out and prioritize those in the level of importance for what you're doing throughout your crop season. So you can move those around. That's one thing new, and that's the second thing new in 4.8. So once you get that set up, I'll hit done. Now I want to do my scouting, so I'm going to select the scouting operation here. Now, if this is the first time that you went to this field, if this is the first time that you've opened it up after you've taken an update, it's going to ask you if you want to do your scouting by a point location or by a zone or a polygon location. And I've learned that the vast majority of people that I've taught through the years, they're doing it by points. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate here today. So I'll choose the point option, and it comes in here, and the ideal would be that you would have your GPS hooked up with your actual iOS device. And by the way, I want to pause this just a second to tell this to everybody. We are working feverishly to get this out beyond the iOS, because we've been asked to do it, of course, on the Android system. So that is coming sometime at the tail end of 2019 for Android devices. Right now, we're just, of course, on the iOS, so enough about that. I do want to pause and say to you, if you're going to use GPS, you're going to use GPS, drop these points more than likely in the field. To do that, I'm going to come back over here and hit my home button in the bottom center of the entire device. And you would go to your settings button, which is that kind of a gray and black down there on the bottom right, wherever you might have that on your iOS. And you would go to your Wi-Fi or your Bluetooth, however you're set up, and tie into your wireless device, or if you had it tied in directly to a cable, or how you ever have it set up, you would make sure that you're hooked to that with your Bluetooth if it was a wireless device. And in my case, if I click on my Bluetooth, I've got my Garmin's here. I would connect to my Garmin GPS antenna to be able to use this to go out and do my scouting in the field. So that's a given that you have to have set up in order to be able to use GPS in the field to do the actual scouting by GPS. So once that would be set up, I'll click my home button back in the bottom of the screen, go back into Sirrus. My field pops up, and I'm ready to go out there, and I'm walking through the field. And in my case, since I've told it to do it by a point, here's the other thing. Well, first off, let's go this direction. If you didn't have imagery, I would walk out to a spot that I would identify. I've got a crop stash area right here. Okay? So I'm walking, and I walk up to a spot, and I drop a point. All I'm doing is a long hold, and I drop a pin right there, and that's got a latitude, longitude tied to it. Now, at that XY location, or latitude, longitude, what do I want to record? So I'm going to come down here in the crops drop-down list, and right now, there's my short list from apricots down to corn. But if I want to add to that, I could hit that plus sign in this top-up box, and here's all the crops that are out there in the world from alfalfa to zoysia grass. So I'd go down through there and add anything else I want from my master list to my short list. So if I wanted to add in cotton or cowpeas or crabgrass or whatever, you would check mark those, and those become part of your short list now. So we've got all the crops covered, majority of them so far in the world, but if there's anything that's missing at the tail end of the session, I'll show you how to send us a request to put that information into the system. So in this case, I've got my corn, so I'll check my corn because I want that to be the crop that I'm course scouting. Then you could go through the crop stage of the growth, and you've got the stage, the scale, and the system. And if I chose whichever of those that I might use, so I'm going to choose the stage and hit done. Then I would select that from my short list. Then you're going to get all of the attributes in your drop-down list of which of those that you selected. So if this was up to, let's just say it's a 2-leaf corn stage, I would select that, hit done, and that's part of my short list, and then add that into the actual record itself at that pinpoint location. And I'm not going to go through every one of these drop-down lists, but I think you get the point that you can set all these lists up so that they're tied specifically to that pinpoint location that you have visited out in the field at this point in time. And if I scroll that up, you're going to see there's cutting number, crop age, yield estimate, and all these options that you have for selecting data. So that's my general crop information. Now, if I've got a weed pressure there, I'm going to click on the weeds database down there on the bottom left of the view, and it opens up the very first database for weeds. If I click that drop down, and I see that I've got my short list set up with all of these different ones. Actually, I did a new install, so I'm having to set all this up new. But if I wanted to come in here and let's say it was a mare's tail outbreak, or just pick a couple of these, then those appear in my short list. Now, once you set these up, you never have to do it again. But I'm going to say, well, I've got some mare's tail showing up in that XY location. And if the weed density, if we had it, if it was moderate, you would pick whatever you wanted to select out of that at that particular time. But also, everybody, you can take up to 5 pictures at that XY location. So if I click on this camera button here, And these pictures, the images that you're going to take, will show up on your reports. We got 2 reports they show up on. So if I choose the option, by clicking on that camera, it's going to either take a photo, or I can choose from a library of iPhone or iPad photos that I might have a dictionary of. But I'm just going to take a photo here and just hit OK, and just take a picture of the dreaded yellow mare's tail. Tie that to my particular location. I'm going to use the photo in the bottom right. And again, you'll notice it turns orange, which indicates you have at least 1 image. You can store up to 5 for each one of these XY locations at that pinpoint location that you're at. Okay? So you could go through and set up the weed stage. And you get the idea. Again, I'm not going to go through every little detail here, but the idea of it is to set all this up, and then once it's set up, you have choice options to pick it from your drop-down list. Now, let's say that we're at the same XY location, and we've got a second weed pressure there that we notice. So I'm going to come down here in the bottom of this first screen to this green circle with the plus sign, and I'm going to turn on a second database. You can turn on 8. So you can include 8 different records of weeds at an XY location. So if I pick my weeds drop-down list, and I say, well, I've got some horseweed in there as well, I could go through and fill out other information tied to that same XY location, and I can do this for up to 8 weeds. You can do the same thing if you scooch over here to the insects and say, well, at that same XY, I've got an insect pressure, and if I hit the drop-down, and you pull down and you pick some kind of whatever the insects might be and make that part of your short list. I'll say I've got fall armyworm showing up or whatever it might be. And then you fill all that information out for all the other drop-downs for the density and the stage, the location threshold. And if you had a second pest at that location, you could hit that second dictionary, open up the second database, and add in the second one that you might need to put in there. And again, you can store up to 8 insects. So you can store 8 weeds, 8 insects, plus 8 diseases. So if I go to the diseases database, I can do the same identical thing as I could with weeds and insects, pick out whatever it would be that would be common that I'm going to use within my corn crop. I'll just pick some here just for the sake of time and fill all that information out. So you can basically store 24, 8 weeds, 8 insects, 8 diseases, and 6 beneficials per each XY location across a field. Okay, now let's move ahead here to a second location. So I walk across the field somewhere to the east, let's just say to some XY location over here. I walk over there and I drop a point right there. Now the way I would drop a point when I'm in the field is I'm actually physically walking over here and I would hit drop GPS point because I'm the human puck out in the field, so to speak. But since I'm not in the field, I'm just clicking on the screen here. But that's how you would do it, to drop that point by walking to it and then hitting that particular drop GPS point button, and that would drop that where you're standing in the field. So here's our second database, but you're going to notice when you go back to the insects and the weeds, everything's empty because it's a new XY location, and we know that spatially. But if you had a lot of the same issues as you did at the first XY location, you could go back and just barely touch the tip of that first point, and it's going to turn green. And you can come over and hit the multi-select button, which think of that as copy and paste. So I'm going to take all the information at the first XY, and I'm going to select that multi-select to highlight that, copy and paste, and I'm going to come over here and touch that second green pin location. I just copy and pasted all the first database information to the second one. Now, this is where you can change things if you need to. So, again, it saves you time from having to fill all this stuff out more than one time. And I'm going to pause for a second and say this. If you ever find yourself asking this question, God, I'm having to fill data out more than one time, I'm going to tell you straight up, you're not using our system in the most optimal way for what it can be used, because you should never, ever have to do that. Whether you're doing points or polygons, you never have to enter data more than twice on the same field, whether it's a point or a polygon. Use that multi-select tool. But now that I've got them both selected, I want to unselect the multi-select button. I want to go into just that second XY location because that's where I'm standing at, and I want to make any changes to things that may be different there than over at the first. So in this case, maybe I don't have any of the horseweed, so I'm just going to hit the X on that to delete that off of that XY location. And then the same way, if I went into the insects, if anything was different at the second XY than the first, I could change that. And I think you get the idea the same way in the diseases, because basically you copy and paste, and then you can edit or change anything that would be different than your first XY location. I'll do one more. So if I come up here and do a long hold, so I'm up here in the northeast corner of the field, and I do a multi-select, and I hit the, here's something that I've done that you don't want to do. I'm going to uncheck the multi-select, because what you want to do is come down here and select the point location that you want to copy from first. So I want to copy from that green point that I just highlighted. Then I want to hit the multi-select, and then go hit the second location, which was empty. Now it's populated with all that second location's information. Then turn off the multi-select or the copy-paste, and then go select that third location, and then you can go into that and change anything on any of those databases, what might be different than what you had from the first one. So now I have all three databases. Now I have.
Joe, I got the audio on here now.
I have all three locations without the information, with the information now all to be the same, and I can go change any of that, what might need to be from the different XY locations. Once that's filled out, and once I get that information in the database as such, I'm going to hit Save in the top right corner. Now, I did this without using Imagery, but we'll go use Imagery in just a second. So I'll hit that Save option in the top right corner, and if you give it a name, it's optional. You don't have to. You can if you want to. And I would suggest highly that you do give a name to it, just simply because if you don't, it's going to end up just calling it scouting, crop scouting. And what I do is a lot of times I'll put the date in there. Even though it does the date, I'll put the date and I'll put the crop on what little bit of crop scouting I do anymore. That way it's in the name and it's very easily identifiable. But you can do whatever you want on your case. Now, where it says Save and Create Rec, right here in the kind of the middle of the screen, I want to change that to yes. I want to use the crop protection and fertilizer. So I'll set that to say yes, use the crop protection and fertilizer. You can also add in up to 4,000 notes. So you can have 4,000 characters in the notes section. So you can have up to 4,000 character limitation there, and whatever you might put will show up on your report that we'll see in just a second. So when I hit Save in the top right of this screen, that's going to save the scouting layer. And because I didn't have this set up previously, I'm going to have to tell it I want to use course P205K20. Now it's going to go into the product rec, and you should get a screen that looks like this. You will get a screen. And you'll notice the blue part of this that says crop protection and fertilizer. So this is where you'll set up your tank mixes or your batches that you're going to go out and do your spraying or spreading on your fields to take care of what you previously had found in the scouting app. So if I come in here, there's several ways to go. What I might suggest is build your tank mix ahead of time. That way you never have to fill this out in the field. So if I go to tank mix, that button that you see in the orange that says tank mix or recents, if you had any recents, if I clicked on that, that would show any of those up. I don't have anything because this is a new install, so I'm going to hit cancel. I'm going to go back to that tank mix option, and I want to choose to create a tank mix here. And I'm just going to call this my Spring 2019 just for the sake of argument. And once I enter the name, I'll just dismiss that. And down at the bottom, I'm going to hit Add New Tank Mix. And this is where you'll go in and you'll build your tank mix with whatever products you're going to use and the constituents of those. So again, I'm going to just call this just S2019 for the sake of time here for Spring 2019. And then you could add a description. I think that's also a 4,000 character limit. And then we can add in whatever the constituents would be, as well as the carrier. So if we come in here to the carrier, and we hit our plus sign, you can come in here and tell whatever that might be, whether you're using water, whether you're using the liquid fertilizer, or whatever the case may be. And then choose that out of the drop-down for that carrier as you're going to set this up. And when we come in here to the Add Product, now that we've added a carrier in, we'll go to add in our different products. And since we've got three three different issues out there: weed pressure, insect pressure, and disease pressure. I'll add in 3 of these. So for my herbicide, as this pops up, the product I'll choose will be a Roundup. And I'll search that out. And then pick, I hit the wrong search, guys. Just do your ROU, and it should look that up to show you all the different Roundups that may be in there. So turn on the ones that you might want to use in respect to that. And hit done, and those become part of your list then. Oop, hit done. Cancel that. Back to that product. Now I've got my list of the short list, and I'll choose the Roundup Original Max and set my product rate, whatever that might be. And then tell it what the units are and what it is that we're going to add into this per acre. And then select those so that it's those units. And I'll hit done to that once I select the product and I select the unit. And then we have the registration code for every one of these as far as the actual products go. So if I select that one, that shows to be a Monsanto Bayer product, and there's the registration code added into that already because it's all been standardized for you. Once you set up, in this case, my herbicide, I would hit add, and that would add my herbicide in now with all that information. Then I would hit my add product a second time and go through and do it for my second one, which would be for my insecticide. Set up your product list. And again, if you just hit your plus sign, there's your master list of everything. And I'm just going to pick some here for sake of time. Hit done, and then you would pick the one that you want. I don't know what a depth is, but we would pick the rate, whatever would be correct there, 16. And then our rate units would, in this case, also be, I wanted a liquid one, but I'm just going to choose this just for the sake of the time. We'll just go pounds per acre. And select that unit and hit done. And here's my point. And I'll just do 2 of these for the sake of time because I think you'll understand where I'm going. I'm adding in my 2 different products, and I would add in my 3rd one for my disease. So I've got 2 in here along with the actual carrier, which in this case is what I'm putting liquid fertilizer. So you set this up before you go to the field, everybody, and this is going to show up for you automatically, so you don't have to do this populating of it in the field. And these product lists that I'm showing you right now, these tank mixes, can be shared to each other through a way that I'll show you at the tail end of the training as well. So one person in the company can build these. You can shoot those short lists over to everybody else. You can shoot your tank mixes over to everybody else, and nobody else has to build them a second time. So I'll save that, and it's asking me for the total app rate. In this case, I'm at 12 gallon per acre. And hit my units and select the correct one out of that list and hit done. And now I've got this set up, and if I hit the save button, I've now got my S2019 as one of my first listed products now of a tank mix that I can utilize. And you might have a list of 8 or 10 or 20 of these, whatever the case may be. So in this case, you could go build more, add new tank mixes down at the bottom, but in this case, I want to choose this particular one, and I'm going to apply that. So I selected it, and then I'm going to hit apply in the top right corner, and that's going to populate all that information, what we just set up, with the products that's tied to it. In this case, I've just got my herbicide and my insecticide, but you could have as many of these tank mixes set up with as many constituents and products as you might need, up to 8 per each one. So I would highly suggest setting your tank mixes up somewhere in the office beforehand and then syncing these out to the guys, or actually you're sending them as a data bullet. And again, I'll explain that in detail at the end of this. And that way everybody has that now already done for them. So they've got a dictionary of their tank mixes, so to speak. And in coming back to the tank mix and recents, if I hit the recents here, that's going to show me what I recently had done, which is down there at the bottom. So you can either save these as a product to use or as a recent to use. And I just save mine. I only work with about 8 or 10, so I just make my tank mixes and save them as such. But both things work quite the same way. Once I'm completed, then I would come over here and I would hit save in the top right corner. And that's going to save that now as an actual recommendation, you'll notice, and to be sent out to the farmer, to the person that's actually going to do the spreading, the spraying. And again, you can add in up to 4,000 notes on the characters. And if you're using Raven Slingshot, you can slingshot this out. You would have to have the product code in order to be able to do that, but you could wirelessly send this out. Now, I'm going to show you how to do it as a shapefile in just a second, but I'm going to hit the Save button in the top right corner. That's going to save it as a layer of data. And then, if I come up here to the top right side, you'll notice in the Options drop-down list, you've got the Send option for that layer of data. So if I hit the Send button, or the Send option here, it pops up and it gives you the options to data bullet that to somebody. Data bullet only works unless someone's got an AgX account, and because you have to have the email of their AgX account to shoot that data bullet over to them. Shapefile can go to anybody. It can go to any device. So a good majority of the customers I've worked with through the years will use a shapefile. The wireless is for John Deere, and if I click on that wireless, you need to have this set up for either the Slingshot, which is Raven's system, or the myjohndeere.com account if you had that set up for the Deere system. So the only two wireless ones we have the capacity to send out to today is either Raven or John Deere, and enough said about that. I'll come back here to the options and go to the Send option for a shapefile, because this is what the bulk of you are probably going to be doing. If you're doing this at the field level, the file's not all that big, but if you were up at the grower level sending out 20 farms at one time, 20 different fields at one time, either at the farm level or up at the grower level, you might want to zip those, because they're going to get a little bigger. But I'm just going to leave mine unzipped because it's only one field and it's not going to be very big. But here's my crop protection recommendation that I would select. You would get a list of all the ones that you might have. You would pick the ones that you wanted, hit the upload arrow in the right top of that small screen, and it pops up here and it gives you this window that you would set up either to email out to somebody or to send. A lot of times what I'll do is set this up when I don't have internet connection in the field. I've got my personal iPad set up. I went into More, and I've got my notes set up where I can send this directly to my notes. And the reason I do that is because it saves it to my notes, and then when I get back to the office, I'll take my notes with those PDFs and or those shapes, and I'll send those shape files over to the people that it needs to go to. If I have connection, I'll just email it to those folks that need those recommendation files. So there's a couple of ways of getting around that here. So you would send that out to the people that needs it. So I'm going to come back here and go back. That's how to do a general idea of how to do crop scouting. And I'm going to come back in here now and use some imagery. So I'm going to go to the I'm going to go to the grower level view. So I'm hitting the menu bar, which gives me the slide out, and I'm going to hit the back button until I get to the grower's level. And on the grower's level, what I'm looking for is a field that I've got imagery on here that I've ordered. Now I'm going to show you how to order imagery here at the tail end of this across multiple growers' farms, across multiple farms, so you don't have to order it field by field anymore. But I'm going to pick one of these fields. So in this case, I'm going to pick this 01 field for my Bob Anderson that I've got imagery on, and pick that particular field to go to. And it's going to load the imagery up in the background. Now, this image right now that I selected has got more than 25% coverage of cloud cover, okay? So you're probably not going to want to use that. You're not going to want to use that. But for the sake of time, you want to pick an image that does not have any white cloud cover on it. But for the sake of time, I'm going to use this one just because I don't want to take the time to have to go through all my images. But the reality of it is, don't use one that's all white, because that's where you have cloud cover and you do not get the correct reflectance of what the sun is giving back off that crop canopy. For training, for what my purposes are here, I'm going to approve that. Let's just say the whole thing's covered with color, and that's going to download that, and I'll continue. And that shows me the reflectance across that field. Now, what this is satellite imagery that you have placed an order on your fields, and it's downloaded the imagery from the start date to the current date and time on the calendar. So at this time, when this was flown, let's say this was just a few days before now, those red areas are areas that the human eye cannot see that there's already crop stress going on. But the satellite camera can. It's called NDVI, or Normalized Difference Vegetation Index. And for us in agriculture, just think of that going from a 0 to a 0.1. And if you're going to see some negative numbers, but the negative numbers are where you've got lots of crop stress. It really runs from a -1 to 0 to a +1. The closer you get to the 0.1, the higher the crop canopy, the better the cell metaphysical structure of the plant. The more water, the more chlorophyll, the healthier the plant. The closer you get to the red, you've got some stress areas. So this helps you to pinpoint where to go to in your field to identify where you've got crop stress. It won't tell you what, but it will tell you where. So in my case, I'm going to come in here with this image in the top right, and I'm going to collect data on this field using this image. So I'll choose that option, and now we're back to what we were doing there before. So I'll choose my scouting, and it takes me into my scouting database. Now we're going to do the same steps we did before, but now we've got a directed way to show us where to go in this field without having to walk around the entire field. So I'm going to walk out to this XY location right here and drop a point there and visit that XY. And I just dropped a green point right at this XY location right here, if you can see that. And then I would go through and fill my databases out, what's appropriate for what I've got going on. And again, I won't do every one of these, but I think you understand where I'm going. And as I'm at that location, I would go into the weeds database and fill out from my short list any of the weed pressures that I would find. And again, you can store up to 8 different weeds by just clicking that green circle with the plus sign on it at that same XY location. Same thing for insects. Fill that out, what might be appropriate for what you're finding. And the same way for the diseases. So the ideal of it is that, again, if you find yourself filling this out redundantly, you should never have to do that. You fill it out all one time, and then you copy and paste this information. So I'll throw one disease in there, and then I'll walk to a second location where I've got across the field a pressure. And with that second location now, my databases are all empty. So I'm going to go back, and rather than having to fill all this out again, I'm going to select the first XY, and I'm going to copy from that very first scouted point location to the second one. So I'm going to hit that multi-selector, that copy-paste tool, and copy and paste that into that second database XY location. Then, after I do the copy-paste, I'm going to hit uncheck that and select just the second XY and go in and make any detailed changes that may be different there than over the first one. It can just save you a lot of time of entering information out in the field while you're scouting. So again, you could drop as many as point locations as what you might need, and that information then would be provided here in reports that we're going to head to in just a second. So once I would drop the second one, if that was all the locations that we're going to go to, I would hit save. I could give it a name. If you don't, it's just going to call it crop scouting. And in my case, I want to save and create a recommendation down about midway down on that page. So I would select to do that, and then I would hit my save button. And that's going to save the crop scouting layer and pull up the actual layer for the actual recommendation. And now that I've already got one that's been populated, I'll hit my tank mix window here and choose the tank mix and choose the one that I have built there earlier today. And select that and apply that, and that applies all that information for what I found automatically, and I don't have to populate all that again because it's already been pre-built. So I've got the product saved to that, and I would hit the save button in the top right corner. And again, you can give it a name. It's an option for you. And we're going to save this as a recommendation because it's going to go out to a controller or spreader, sprayer, whatever the case may be. And we're going to hit the save button. And now that saves our recommendation. Now there's several kinds of reports that we can run here. And the first one that we can run is just the simply quick report. So, but the quick report, and I'm at the field level, and I just hit the options, you'll notice there, and I get the options drop down for a quick report. And it's just a what you see is what you get kind of a thing. So if I hit OK to that, I give it a name, and what was on the screen is what you're going to get on the report. Nothing more, nothing less. That's it. But that's the quickest, down and dirtiest and fastest way to get a report ran. But it doesn't give you but what you see on the screen. Now the rest of them give you more information. We're going to go through those. So this could also be saved as a PDF by hitting that upload arrow up there in the top right corner and saving that either to your notes page. And that's what I do a lot of times when I'm out in the field, as I said before, but that's up to you completely. Or you can print it if you had an air printer and you set your air printer up. You can print it off right there in the truck cab and give it to your farmer before you leave the farm. But however you would save that, you could save that. The second option would be to come up here and to go back to one screen behind this. So I'm going to hit that back view. And I'm going to come down here and hit this plus sign a second time. And that's going to pop up everything what we were looking at before, but down here in the right bottom of this screen is the reports option. And I'm going to click that. That slides over and shows me all of my reports that I have. So the second type of report you can run, and I'm going to kind of go up in value in my estimation for what these reports give you, and do an activity report. The activity report is both on both on Sirrus Premium and Sirrus out of the box, or just Sirrus kind of basic. I would select my activities, and I could select my scouting and my crop protection rec that I had done previous to what I'd done that morning or that day. And you can select as many as you might want to run. When I hit the select button, it's going to run the reports, generate them, and give you more detailed information, because now you're pulling database information out of the databases for what you populated, and in this case about our products, as well as the crop, the weeds, the diseases, the insects, and so forth. But that's how a activity report looks, and you notice down on the bottom it gives you the product summary and how much total product you're actually going to need to do this across those acres for what you have set this up to go out and actually do the recommendation for. There again, a third time here, you can come up here and hit the upload arrow. You can save this as a PDF, you can email it to a customer, and again, there's a report, so it's just up to you on how you want to save that. The third kind of a report is I'll go back to the plus sign down here, or the add button. I'll hit the reports option in the bottom right of the screen, and I'm going to go to the, let's go to the scouting and recommendation option. And in this case, I would select my activities, and I'd pick the same two I did there earlier. And I'm going to pick all four, because I did one scouting and recommendation without an image and one with. And hit select, and it's going to generate 6 pages of reports here and give this to me in the report format that we can save as I've been teaching you here through this process. So this report shows me my XY locations up in the top right of that input map, and then it shows me each one of those locations for record 1, and if you have sub-records in there, like 1 and 1.2 and 2.1, that's the second database option that you had incorporated information for that record at that XY location. So we're going to show that into record format, and then any of the insects, diseases, pictures, or images that you take, they're going to show up in this report. And then down at the bottom, you get the actual products, the carrier, and the total lap for each of the different ones for what you've created this for. So as I scroll this up, I'm going to see that. There's my second report, and so forth. Okay. I'll hit done to that, and again, you can hit your upload arrow, do the same thing that I was saying before. You can save those as PDFs, you can save them to your notes, you can email that to a farmer, to a customer, email it to yourself to have a saved copy of that, whatever works for you, or print it off if you have your air printer set up with your iOS. I'll hit done to that, go back to my add button down at the bottom center, do my reports a fourth time, and I'll come down to the recommendation summary report. Choose that recommendation underneath those activities. And I had built 2 today, so I'll run both of them. And the only difference is one I used with Imagery, one I didn't without. 100% of the time, you're going to use one or the other, not both of them. So it's going to give you that information for that summary for what it is for the product that you had saved there, giving you all the specifics. And again, a fourth time, you can hit your upload arrow, save those as PDFs, email those to yourself or to a customer, save them to your notes page, and then print them off later, or however it works for you. If I move up, come up here to the farm view, and I'm going to show you how to order imagery across multiple farms at a time, which is a new 4.8 option. Excuse me. I'm going to hit the menu bar in the top left, and I'm going to hit the back button to go to the farms level. And then at the farms level, I'm going to come over here in the view, and I'm going to hit this, find the right one here, guys. Well, I'm having a brain warp here, guys. Bear with me just a second. Let me teach you something here, because I just forgot where this darn thing's at. It just came out. Yeah, here's imagery view. Sorry, I'm thinking too many things at one time. So I'm going to come down here to the activities view in the bottom. I'm at the farm level, okay? And I've got like 10 farms, 10 fields with this farm. And at the farm level view, you've got these three headers right here: the activities layers, imagery, and surface. We want to go into the imagery layer. And then you can come in here and enroll multiple fields into the premium imagery, Sirrus Premium, of course. So if I click on that, that's going to give me all the fields that I would have currently, and I can come in here and enroll whatever number of these that I would want to. So you can pick and choose as many as you want for that particular one. Now that's the images received, but I'm going to hit the enrollment tab up here on the right side and go through and pick whatever fields that I want to enroll into that. And then hit the enroll fields in the premium imagery, and that would enroll multiple fields at one time into the imagery itself. Come on. Then scroll into that area and pick all the fields that you would want to select and set the enrollment date. So you can pick, it's unlimited. You can pick as many fields as you want at one set time. Set the enrollment date to that. And the one thing I would teach you on this is set this, if you're going to start, here we are, May 21st, but if you wanted this thing to go back a few days, of course it is May 21st, you can set this back for as far back as you want it to go. But it's always going to default to the current date and time. So if you're in, let's say, October of 2018, and you're enrolling a bunch of fields, but you don't want your Sirrus to start downloading the imagery until, let's say, April 30th of 2019, set your enrollment date back in 18 to the April 30th date of 2019, so it doesn't start taking up a lot of your memory on your local device whenever it's downloading imagery, if that makes any sense. In my case, I want to start today because I'm going to start scouting today, and I'll enroll all those different fields starting today's date. And I hit the enroll button, that's it, you're done. So I can hit my images and go back and just go back to here. Now as your images are collected and as they're processed, they'll just appear because they're going to automatically download into your system. And if you're ever wondering, I wonder if I've got imagery yet for this because I ordered it yesterday. If there's imagery already flown for it and available, what I will do a lot of times to check and make sure I've got a field that I'm visiting that's got imagery, I'll go up here to the grower level. And at the grower level view, I'll come over here and click in the map and look at the imagery and make sure the fields that I'm going to go to has got viable imagery available that I'm going to go out and scout today. So that's one option for you. You can go to the farm level and do the same thing, guys, and then download the images that you want. So have all of that done is my point before you get in the field, and that way you can work with the most efficiency of what the system can provide for you. All right, that covers the bulk of what I wanted to talk about today on crop scouting utilizing imagery. I've recorded this, and I also, because I've got such a large group of people, I'm going to give you my email, and if you have any questions about any portion of this, please shoot me an email, and I will get back with you as possible here this morning and get information back to you. And my email is bill.richardson@proagrica.com. bill.richardson@proagrica.com. untitled.com. So if you have any other questions beyond what I've talked about, or if you want a copy of this, what's been recorded this morning, just let me know by email, and I'll send that your way. I'll send you the link to that. Other than that, thank you, everybody, and hopefully it dries out enough we can get the activities that we need to get done for this time of the year. So with that being said, we'll stop it right there and go on then. Thank you, everybody.